Okay, just a quick introduction of Dwight. He is really very well known in the community in that he was as you'll hear, he is a survivor, but Dwight is also a doer. And he's very much somebody that did a lot of things in this community of Shoreline. He's got a tremendous community spirit. And he was one of the fathers, if you will, of the city of Shoreline, along with, where's Mr. Grassnick? Is he here?
He's not here.
Okay. And so anyway, he helped put Shoreline on the map, literally and figuratively. Also, recently, he chaired the Shoreline Veterans Association and has given us really some very fine work there. This is some of his work, which is the Veterans Plaza behind Shoreline City Hall. And this made the front page of the State Legionnaire magazine. Above the fold, it's a very prestigious place to be on the newspaper, of course. And so we really thank Dwight for doing that, and you can see the Veterans Plaza on the back on the way to the parking lot at Shoreline City Hall. So I'll have that over there with me if anybody wants to come and have a look at the plaza, and you can go see it for yourself. And then in addition to that, Dwight, you heard him answer the role as a judge advocate for this post. And so Dwight is still serving at his not-so-youthful age, and the post is very happy that he is a member, and we're very proud to have him. And I'm proud to introduce Dwight Stevens.
Thank you. I couldn't have done that memorial monument without the people who donated $75,000. It wasn't easy to get it out of them, but it was fun. I hope that you can hear me. And I got to thinking about showing up here tonight on the way over. A little closer, okay, a little closer. And I thought, well, the easiest way is to just start when my military career started. And that was in 1941. And I was a 17-year-old senior at West Seattle High School. And a bunch of us characters, when they called away our National Guard and sent them to Alaska in the summer of '41, 6 months before the war started, we all went down and volunteered, and we were in the 4th Washington Volunteer Infantry Regiment. And so I knew where to go when the real war came. My dad was an infantryman in World War I. I knew I didn't want to be there. At any rate, starting out with that, you all know what happened on December 7th of 1941. The Japanese raised hell at Pearl Harbor, and we were at war. And I was a rip-roaring PFC in the Washington State Guard, and we started to drill twice a week instead of once, and I was still in high school. And so went on and finished that and put in 1 quarter at the UW in the summer of '42, and then they lowered the qualifications for aviation cadets. I thought I would like to fly. I'd been a member of the Jimmy Allen Flying Club. And you could do that if you ate the right kind of cereal in the early 30s. You set the box tops in and you got a pair of wings and all that. I didn't know it was going to pay off. And at any rate, I met my wife in the fall of '41. She was one of those cute little sophomores that came in behind us. And I thought, that's good. I dated her and we kind of stuck together. And she's at home tonight, but we've been married 73 years. I know a couple of people who say that's a good start. But, that's fine. And so anyway, I joined the Army in September 9th, 1942, and I resigned from the State Guard. And then I started looking for a job because I had joined the Army. I wasn't Air Force. I was enlisted as a private and an aviation cadet. Gotta learn to fly someday. But the first thing they did is tell me, go home and wait 3 months. We just lowered the standards to let you in. Go home and do push-ups. And anyway, I was in good shape. I played a couple of sports in high school. And I'm sorry I'm so short. I spent my whole life telling people I was 5'10.5", and now I'm down to 5'6.5" just since I was 85. I'm slowly disappearing. I probably won't be able to be back because I won't be able to see this thing. At any rate, I was building a fence for a neighbor friend of my parents on a Sunday morning, December 7th of 41, and I looked up on the sidewalk and here came my girlfriend that I had just met 3 or 4 months before. And she lives 3.5 miles from here, and Sunday the streetcars didn't run very often and whatnot, so I thought, that's unusual. I think I've got her hooked. And so I said, what brings you down here? And she says, hey, the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor. And I said, what the hell is Pearl Harbor? None of us knew at the time, unless you were related to Navy. And so I thought, oh God, I'm already in the Guard. And she said, well, that's the way it is. It's got to be tough. And anyway, it was. She followed me till I went overseas, and then went back to. She went to Boeing while I was flying B-17s in Europe. So we had a little of a plant too in us, and there's a couple of people here who work there that I met tonight. But at any rate, away went civilian life. I got out of college and went to 1 quarter, and at Christmas time the letter came and said, we're ready for you. Please be on the train for Santa Ana, California on Sunday, so-and-so, and in December. And so I had the usual gathering of the gang there, my grandmother and I, who had traveled around America quite a bit. As when I was a kid, I thought she was taking me on a trip, and it worked out that I heard 75 years later that I was sent to keep track of her. Anyway, what you don't know can't hurt you. At any rate, I showed up at the depot down in King Street Station, and my grandmother and family was around, and cousin slipped me a $20 bill, and he said, try to learn to play poker before you get there. And we went to Santa Ana, and here's 20,000 other cadets. And the war really was on. And that was that Army basic training, plus learn something about airplanes. And so that was called pre-flight. And we spent 3 months in the next consecutive 3-month periods going to different phases of training. After basic, we went to primary. And at primary flying school, you learn to fly. And we had biplanes, that's how old we are. Biplanes have two wings. Until I fly. And at any rate, we managed to, well, I soloed in 4 hours and 45 minutes. I had that much dual time, and the guy thought, might as well kill himself now it's late. And so I went out and flew and managed to get back, and he said, go again. He was standing in the middle of a field, which is now Scottsdale, Arizona. And their airfield out there used to be just a 1 mile square foot blacktop pad with a little kiosk right in the middle. And I looked out and I made a lousy landing on the first one. And I almost ground looped. I got off 20, 30 degrees getting control of the plane. And I looked over towards the kiosk and I see the instructor. Go again, go again. So I went again, and I was all over being nervous, I guess, about it. And the plane felt so light with only one person in it. It's amazing. And if we'd had a bag of mail with us, I'd have been in trouble. But at any rate, I flew 65 hours in primary. And by the time I finished there, we were real hot shots. We were told to go out and do Section 8s, and everybody's Section 8. It was really a Section 4, but Section 8 sounded good because we were all crazy being in the Air Force anyway. But at any rate, you go out in the desert and you pick a crossroads and you fly down this road and up and over. And when you're on top, you turn 45 degrees, 25, 90 degrees to the left. Down you go, you come up that one, you do another loop, you come down this one, then you go over there, and you come down this way. And it's amazing how quick you learn to fly when you're doing those kind of things. It was really, and we flew in the mornings and afternoons in that Arizona heat, and then nighttime we were in ground school, and we went from ground school from 7 to 10 at night, and then lights out at 10:30. And they didn't mean 10:31; they meant 10:30. So we were all ready to sleep. So after basic training, I went from Scottsdale, Arizona to Marana, Arizona, almost down to Tucson for basic training. Now we've got a 450 horsepower VWII vibrator. It was a terrible airplane, and everybody hated it. And I didn't even know anything about it yet, but so we had some check rides down there by the instructors, and they said, Steven, stick around over there, and you over there, and they picked out 25 of us, and there was about 250 guys. And so they waited till all the rest of them marched away, and then they pulled us in tight and said, okay, we're going to try something with you guys. We're going to try to eliminate the VWII vibrator. Huh? I'm not going to volunteer. So anyway, they said, we're going to let you fly the advanced trainer, which was the Navy called it the, wait a minute, the Army called it the AT-6, the Navy called it the, somebody help me.
68.
Huh?
Called it a Texan.
Well, that was, yeah, it was built by a North American who also built the P-51, and it was a wonderful airplane if you're going to fly the P-51 when you become a real hot shot. And so, at any rate, I never flew the VWII vibrator, but I did ride in the back seat one day, and the instructor fired it up. You can't see over the front. We were all dragging our tails in those days. We had a tail wheel. We were trying, tricycle was backwards. You had to come down and stall and dump it on the ground and then quit flying. Okay. So, at any rate, I was fortunate enough to be in that group that got to fly the AT-6, and it was about 2 months before they lost their first AT-6 when I crashed. And, what happened was, you know, all you had to do is mess up a little bit and they washed you out. You were gone to the infantry, or you became you were sent to gunnery school to learn to be a gunner. And I had a check ride with a major who I never saw many of in those days. So most of our instructors were first and second lieutenants. And so I went with the major, and first he says, "Here's my parachute." And I put it on my shoulder, and I got in step with him, and out to the airplane we went. And he gave me a check ride. And he said, "Why the hell did you crash?" And I said, "Well, as I told the investigators, a week ago, you didn't want us to set these AT-6s on the ground at 100 and some miles an hour. And if they bounce crooked, do not try to straighten them out. Just put your eye on what you see and go for it and keep it there. Don't start this because all of a sudden you'll dip a wing and you're in trouble." Okay, that's what I was doing, but I had a brand new instructor in the back seat who had just been assigned to Phoenix the day before. And he came out and got in the back seat and went with me, and he didn't know about the rule. So when I came down and dropped the thing on its tail, and it bounced a little crooked, I started to straighten it out and go right straight ahead. I did what I was told, and it paid off because I'd have been washed out if it hadn't been for that. But the poor guy in the back seat didn't even know that the rule existed. And he was a wonderful guy that I met when I came back from overseas a year and a half later. And we had a good laugh together. But the plane went, I was fighting him. And I was as strong as he was apparently because he lost, or I lost, or gave up. But anyway, he pulled the stick back and the plane went right up and stopped. And about 20, they figured 28 to 30 feet in the air, and it just stalled, and it fell off on one wing and down. And now I look out of the window, and here's my wing right here. And so I thought, well, it was fun being an aviation cadet for a while. And, so I was.
Let me interrupt for just a second. The members of the post and the auxiliary, you don't need to sign the clipboard. Okay, that's not necessary.
Good.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So at any rate, the crash was not blamed on me, and I was left as an aviation cadet to finish basic training. And we had flown by that time another 85 hours. So now I'm a 170-hour pilot, and felt very comfortable in the AT-6. And the poor old Volpe vibrators all disappeared. So that was my first victory. Then you go to advanced training, and back to Phoenix I went. Geez, I got tired of Arizona. And when you go to advanced training, why, this is the end of advanced. You get your wings, you get your commission, and you become a pilot. Qualified. And so by then we had been all through the Army manuals on interior guard duty, and we knew how to replace the guard and all of that at night when they're on duty. And we didn't need any more soldiering, but we needed a lot more familiarity with airplanes. And they're driven by engines, and we got those taken apart in front of us. They wanted us to know how they work. And I'm not going to overdo this tonight, but those that training that we had was so good, we didn't know how many times it would save our lives. We were well trained. And so by the time I graduated from flying school, at the end of another 3 months period of being upside down and right side up, you know, all the ways you can go, why, I graduated, got my wings, and got them clipped that night at 10 o'clock when I married my wife. Please, I'm not a professional. But anyway, now where are we gonna go? We're gonna go to Yuma, Arizona. And what are we gonna do down there? You're gonna learn to be a B-17 co-pilot. God, I was the hottest single-engine fighter pilot that ever graduated in my own mind. And I was brokenhearted, but hey, orders are orders, and I went to Yuma, and 2 months, I flew the B-17, I don't know, 50, 60 hours. By then I had a total of almost 300 hours flying, and was quite a competent pilot. I felt comfortable. And then we left Yuma, got on a train, and were sent to Salt Lake City for just 10 days. At which time we got put into a combat crew. Ah, good. One more pilot, a bombardier, a navigator, 6 gunners, you know, an engineer, radio man. Anyway, we were a combat crew. And then where do we go? We go to Ardmore, Oklahoma. Another 3 months period at the CCCTS, a Combat Crew Training Station. And we flew out over the Gulf, we flew over Texas and did our shooting at targets being towed by other planes over the Gulf. And we went out in the Texas desert and shot at ground targets. And of course, it wasn't anything like flying a single engine plane and lining up the targets and seeing the dirt fly up and back of them and whatnot. It was a matter of sitting up. This is kind of like bus driving. But it doesn't matter how big or small the plane is, the aerodynamics are all the same until the jet came along, and then all you had was push. We had to fight a propeller that was trying to go this way, and the body of the airplane wanted to go that way, and it was built offset. If you could sit on the windowsill of a B-17 and look aft, you could see that the tail was not exactly straight on that plane. It was off enough to help fight the torque, to keep the plane from twisting in the air. And so these are things you don't think about when you fly to Honolulu, you know. So, anyway, we got through that phase of training, and as a combat crew, we flew 150 hours as a 10-man crew, and then they said, hey, we haven't got any more airplanes. There's been a strike at the Boeing Airplane Company, and there's been a problem with transportation, and so you're not going to fly your planes overseas, the ones we had been flying in Oklahoma, but you're going to go to another station in Kearney, Nebraska. So, kissed my wife goodbye. I went to Kearney, Nebraska for 10 days again. Well, that whole 10-day stuff. And so at that time, someplace was very busy getting all of us sent to the right place overseas, but we didn't fly ourselves. We flew as passengers from LaGuardia Field in New York. But because all troop movements were secret during the war, we couldn't tell anybody where we were going, when we were leaving, or anything else. The train from Kearney went up into Canada. And it trickled all over. Finally came down and back into the United States in Buffalo. 7 days later, we're in New York City. So we all did get together, and then they gave us some bad news. They said, you guys are gonna have to be in a hotel downtown, 6 blocks from Times Square. Oh. So be ready. We were there about 10 minutes and somebody told us and everybody else that, hey, all you have to do is go downtown, go into any good bar, try the, I can't remember the name of them, the most expensive bar in New York, and they'll buy your dinner for you and all the drinks you want. Because we all, in those days, we had to wear our uniforms. We didn't even have civilian clothes with us. And so, I didn't go to bed for 6 nights. Hey, I was an old married man. With some other guys who, on about the 3rd night we were there, we were standing in the back of the Coney Island Dipper, and it was a big one. We were standing in the back seat looking aft, and it's doing its thing. Because, we're almost bored. People are screaming at the and all of a sudden, oh my God, and a beam went by that had just cleared our heads about a foot. If we'd have been standing up or waving or something, we'd have lost an arm. Anyway, you know what got us there? Somebody told us 2 hours before that they were selling beer for 5 cents a glass in Brooklyn. Well, we managed to get over there. We took 2 cabs of guys and went and tried to drink the place dry, and we had a wonderful evening. And, staggered back to the hotel. 6:30 in the morning. We had to report to the desk at 6:30 and 6:30 in the evening to see if we were on orders. And the guy said, "Are you Lieutenant Stephen?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Okay, you're late. Your bus is right outside. Go get your gear." I had half of it in my arm and half of it in my hand, and I had a B4 bag I was dragging on the ground, but I got on the bus and the guys helped me pack it, and they took us to LaGuardia Field, and away we went. No, we flew up to, not Gander, Newfoundland, most of you did who went that way, but we went to Stephenville, which I thought was appropriate, and we refueled there for the jump across to Scotland. And we met 2 little boys with a red wagon full of just boiled lobsters. Big, $1 a piece. So we all bought one, got on the airplane, it took off, we're 15 minutes in flight, and the pilot comes back and left the plane in the hands of the co-pilot, and he said, "Hey guys, there was no seats in this plane, by the way. We were sitting in bucket seats along the side, and there was freight in the middle." And he said, "Could you guys all move up forward a ways? We'd all gone in the back and we were eating this lobster on the floor between our legs." And but anyway, that started the flight, and we flew on and on and on and landed in Scotland. In Scotland, we were there just long enough at an air base to get our American money turned in and a handful of stuff that didn't even look like money, and you couldn't pronounce what they were. They had farthings and everything's up. And the air raid siren went off. What the hell? Well, they must know we're here. And so we all went to an air raid shelter, and I thought, boy, this has got to set some kind of record. And finally, the all clear blew, and we came up out of the ground, and we learned that a German propaganda plane had flown over. It was a friendly-looking biplane, and the guy was throwing leaflets out to talk the people in England and Scotland into surrendering. Which they weren't allowed to do at that time because they had been under the heel of Hitler for quite a while. And so, finally got overseas. Then we get on another train, and we're going somewhere for 10 days, I just know it. And so we headed down to Stowe, and there we were assigned a bomb group. And from there we got in a good old U.S. Army armored truck, and away we went and went out to as close as you can get to Germany, right on the coast in Suffolk County, at a little town called Horham. And so at Horham, the station 119 was a B-17 bomber group, about 3,000 men, 100 airplanes, 50, 60 pilots and their crews. And we were one of 40 bomb groups in 2 small counties. And we didn't think anything of it till the first mission we went on. And you got down the runway, there was 3 planes on the runway at a time. The minute you saw the plane ahead of you lift his tail and really get going, you let off the brakes and put all 4 engines full steam ahead. And he would go off this way, and you'd cut inside him and try and catch him, and you had 4 guys right behind you. We all took off in 30-second intervals. And you climbed at 500 feet per minute in a left-hand circle, and at 500 feet a minute, if you are constant, and you better be, because there's somebody here and there's somebody there, and there's this whole bunch circus going on below you, and it's dark, and you have the lights on. We had a few little running lights that we were allowed to show, but we couldn't show any of the German spies, I guess, in England, how many planes were coming from each group. So everything was secret, and every once in a while a plane or 2 would hit together and make a terrible display as they went down. But we would go to 20,000 feet and stop climbing. By then we'd all caught up with our leaders, and we're already in formation, and then we started for the channel, which is about 20 minutes away. And where am I, time-wise? Anyway, our first mission was to a French town on the coast that was just ahead of our invasion force that hadn't gotten there yet. The D-Day was on June 6th. We got there on June 7th, but we had to practice for 4 hours before we could be ready for combat, because they wanted to take the U.S. out of our system. What I mean is, in the United States, when we flew formation, we had to be 50 feet apart. And 6 is better if the Germans are watching you. Yeah. It's the good-looking formations that are doing the best job that didn't get jumped by the German fighters first. And they'd all go for the loose flying, not so disciplined people. But our bomb group was trained at Soap Lake, Washington in 1943, 42 and 3, and then went over in 43. Now here I am in 1944 as a replacement co-pilot, and unhappy as hell. And so anyway, we were going to Rouen, France that day. And we got halfway across the channel, and it was time to fire your guns just for test, make sure they all work. So you got 13 50 caliber machine guns going off over your head, and it's getting exciting. And Paul Feast from Marlin, Washington was my pilot, and he went like that to me, and we could just reach around the throttle quadrants and bang each other if we really needed each other's attention. And he said, and I looked over at this black cloud, and he said, what the hell are we doing here? I think it was on the orders for the day. So we went and we bombed a German panzer division that was just outside of town, and turned around and went back and enjoyed a milk run mission. The milk run is when you think not much is going to happen, and it's a short mission. And we were in the air about 4 hours, and anyway, we didn't lose anybody, and it was great. Next morning, up at 2:30, go to the mess hall, truck to the briefing room. We're briefed to go to Munich. Munich's a hell of a place, isn't it? And so anyway, it's going to be a long day. And it got a lot longer because the Germans seemed to know we were coming. And I don't know whether it was their secret work underground in England that they always seemed to know we were coming. And they would put box barrages over towns and just blacken the sky with flak, hoping we'd turn off or something. We didn't even look. We weren't allowed to. We had a job to do, and we're going to bomb there, and whether you've got a box barrage or not. And so we did, and we lost several airplanes, not all of our own, some of them from other groups around us. We bombed a strategic target in Munich, and then because we had an escape route at the target, we could go to Switzerland. If we were so shot up that we couldn't make it to England, we could go to Switzerland. And if you're careful, because there's a huge lake between South Bavaria and Switzerland that they told us before we went. I told you we were well trained. They said, don't just clear the water and land if you have to, because you'll still be in Germany. You've got to go over the second huge body of water, then you're in Switzerland. Switzerland was a neutral country during the war, and they weren't supposed to, but they used to filter the pilots out with their crews when they landed there, and they'd fly again someday. If by the time they got there, the war was still going. So that was the day in Switzerland that scared the hell out of me. And I thought, this is really dangerous. So we got back home, and we were really tired. You've been in the air 8 hours and a half, and you've been buckled in your seat the whole time. You never bothered to look for a restroom, they didn't exist. And so we landed in England. Then you go to the briefing room for an hour and talk to ground officers who are trained to interrogate you. And you tell them everything with the lead of your navigator, who kept notes the whole time of where we saw flak, where we saw troop movements. But we were so high in the air, we were bombing at 25,000 feet, and that's almost 5 miles in the air, and you can't see much on the ground. You can't see an airplane at 25,000 feet on the ground unless it's leaving a big long contrail out of its trailing edge. So anyway, we finally got home from Switzerland. We lost our usual 4% of our airplanes, and we understood that that was common, and that's why we have you fly 25 missions. That was the tour. And, well, we've got 2 in already. Next day, 2 o'clock in the morning, away we go again. Where are you going? Munich. We never did know what was so important about Munich. Beer is great. But, anyway, we went back and we had another horrendous day. We lost twice as many planes as we did the day before. And Gosh, I had letters from mothers whose sons were in those missions, and they wanted to know what happened to their kids. Did their plane crash, or did it spin in, or did it blow up? And it was, as I say, exciting. This was my summer vacation in Europe. And so anyway, we went on. The next important target we hit was later, and it was we were going to bomb a Panzer division which was holding up Patton's Third Army at Avranches, France. And it's only 15 miles in from the coast. So the invasion had only gone 15 miles when we flew 2 missions in one day to go get the Panzer Division out of their square mile of forest. And because they were all loaded with German 88 cannons, which are a real good piece. It would shoot at the tanks on the ground and then shoot at you in the air and still reach you at 25,000 miles, 24,500 or so. And then they had to use larger ammunition to get above that altitude. Anti-aircraft shells do not go off when they hit a plane. They're all timed. And they go right through you and keep going. And then they burst. And then you hear this hail on your wings, and it is shrapnel raining down on top of you. And you say, well, they missed us again. And just before we got to the target, and we dropped down to 10,000 feet from 20, we're a real juicy target. And we took a big hit on the left side of our plane, and the engine quit immediately on that side because the fuel lines had all been severed, and the old B-17 started to lurch this way, and Paul and I are working like hell to get it leveled up. And so we got it squared away. I could smell pure gasoline. I just knew we were going to burst into flames. And we didn't. And we got it going around to the right, and we flew right over Jersey and Guernsey Islands, which had been bypassed by the invasion force, and they were still German. Then were we in the flak. And they just shot the hell out of us. And as we came back around towards the channel, the second engine on the left side quit running. And they figured, well, we swim or we don't. And we have 10,000 feet, I had 9,000 feet maybe then. So we just fought like hell to keep it going. What they think you can do, the fuel tanks and the lines were severed. But with both 2 engines on one side dead, you've got a real problem. But we had enough altitude, we went down, we went over the English coast at 500-600 feet and headed for our field, which we could see, and we went and got on it. And oh, that was an exciting afternoon. By now you're an old veteran, you know, you look pretty hot in the club that night because you had one ribbon on your chest or something, and so you could drink more. And we did drink more. And I went overseas weighing 172 pounds. I had a 29-inch waist, and I was really a he-man. And I came home 7 months later, I weighed 148. I think it was the booze. First time I've ever admitted that. At any rate, that takes me halfway through my combat, and I'm going to spit it out here in about 10 minutes. And it got more exciting and less exciting. Some missions were easy. Went down one day, got awakened at 3 o'clock in the morning, went in to get briefed, and name's not on the board. had all these planes painted on the wall and on a big board, and it showed where you were in a formation. No Paul Feast, no Dwight Stevens, and we said, by then, Paul and I were sharing the pilot duties. We were both qualified as first or co-pilot. And so, at any rate, I'm getting excited again.
Your names weren't up there.
Pardon?
Your names weren't up there.
You get A, you were Thank you, Dale. At any rate, we're on the board. Let's go back and go to bed. And nothing doing. We asked the major, where are we? He says, oh, you got something special to do today. And what's that? Well, you're gonna fly with General Keller. Oh, really? General Keller? God, that's a lot of rank. I think I had made first lieutenant by then, but a long way from brigadier general, who was in charge of the 3rd Division, 1/3 of the 8th Air Force, which was 40 groups. And he drew a lot of water. And he got up and came over and introduced himself. And he said, you Paul and Dwight? Yeah, we're it. You're going with us. And he said, which one of you Paul? And I said, that's Paul. And he said, okay, you're in the tail. Stevens, you're going to fly with me up front because I want to see where we're going and see that everything is going good. He had 2 tech sergeants with him loaded with camera equipment. He put them aboard and away we went. And where are we going? We're going to Poltava, Russia. But we can't go that far. Yeah, you can make it, but you can't come back. What's in Poltava? Well, there used to be a famous Russian Air Force base there, but the Germans wiped it out 2 times, and you won't find it. But your pad, the grids that we were going to land on, because we were in a sandy desert, we put down the steel mats that all hooked together and made a runway for us to land on and wouldn't sink into the sand. And they said, you'll make it. You're going to have 2,750 gallons of gas apiece tomorrow. And that's topped off after you warm up. They come back and fill all the tanks. And then you go, and you go, and you go. 7,000 miles later, all of the dials said E. And I had an old B-17, Paul and I should say, we had an old B-17F. And it was out of rig, it flew sideways as well as forward. And it was really what we call war weary, it wasn't active much longer. But we got there, except we had to land first, because we were out of gas. And so we talked it over with the lead ship, and then we fired a couple of flares, because we also had a couple of wounded on board. So we went down and landed first. And we were one of the only OD colored airplanes in the formation. They were being replaced with silver models that they didn't cover with 350 gallons of paint and weigh them down. Everything was making lighter. And they also cut our armor plate in half to make it lighter. And all of a sudden our gunners were crouched down and running on these little slabs of light, sitting on top of this thing, you know. It was steel, but the other half of it was gone, but that's what you do in wartime. And, but we made it to Poltava, but as we taxied off the end of the runway, a Jeep came up, and it had a colonel in it, in a Russian uniform. He had an interpreter with him, he had his daughter with him, he had his wife with him, and I think another family member, and he's driving like a madman. And he got us to stop, and he came up and when we stuck our head out of the side door to get out of it, he shook hands quickly, and he thought we were the group leaders. We landed first, and we were a funny color. And so anyway, I told Paul was the first pilot, and he said, okay, he'll see you later. And they took him away. And that evening, during some entertainment by Russian infantry dancers, we found Paul sitting up on the stage with all this brass from the Russian army and all of the American brass that we flew there with. They were on stage, and Paul is sitting there wondering whether he should sit up straight or not, because he didn't belong there. And there's a book that I looked at 2 days ago, I have, and it was telling about the day that Paul Feast became a general. It was a long night. Just about the time the entertainment got good, the air raid sirens went off, and here comes the Germans. And they followed us in. We've been on the ground about 2 hours. We didn't properly spread the planes out enough, and they just set up a traffic pattern around the place and shot it. 62 of our planes were left there the next day when we flew a mission out to Warsaw, Poland. And so that's what happens. And I laid in a slit trench, and that's just, you take a shovel and turn view over and get in it and lay there. And it got cold, it got dark, and I was so excited when I finally climbed in to my canvas cot, and I had my flying gear on yet. I was so cold, I couldn't go to sleep. And I thought, God, I've been awake since forever, like 2 o'clock yesterday. And I went to look out the tent, probably gonna go relieve myself, and look out the tent, and here's a Russian soldier standing at parade rest with a big wad of newspaper sticking out of his mouth with a fire going on the end of it. He's burning some kind of weeds in it. And it hit him butt in his collar, and he only had one. I thought it was kind of a flimsy looking uniform. How they stood the cold, I don't know. I got back on my damn cot happy I wasn't out there, but I still couldn't go to sleep. And so I was kind of fuzzy the next day when they got us up, and our plane was declared flyable, and they put 200 patches on it because it had been straight. And as we flew to Poland, the patches started coming off. And it started to whistle louder. We couldn't hear each other even on the intercom. And so we went back, after we bombed in Poland, we went back to Poltava and landed again. And they gassed her up and got her ready to go. And the next day we flew down to Foggia, Italy. And they couldn't believe us when we got there. They could hear us. And so we landed in Foggia, and we sat there for 4 days, but that gave them time to put metal patches on all the holes, and the plane quieted down. And then we took off early morning again, 4 o'clock in the morning, flew up by Rome, took a left, and went out over the Mediterranean, and our assignments were to bomb the airfields at Toulon and Toulouse, which are the headquarters now of Airbus. And they were big airfields. You could see them from 15 miles at sea. And so we flew down the Mediterranean about in the middle, and we're climbing all the time, so we want to be at 20,000 feet when we get to the Riviera. It's not always enjoyable there. So anyhow, we flew, but halfway there I said to Paul, what is that on the water ahead? And it was the invasion force for the invasion of southern France. Wow. There were 1,500 boats in the water, And when we flew over them, the landing craft, the infantry, artillery and all, was making loops around their motherships, and then they were just breaking off and going for the beach. So we flew right over the top of them, we bombed the hell out of Toulon and Toulouse, and went to England, went home. And about the only other thing that I know people like to hear about bad things that happened and exciting things that you endured, but the only problem we had was getting hold of that one time on 2 engines until it happened again at Hamburg, Germany. And now you're a long way from home. And we flew the B-17 all the way from Hamburg on 2 engines, the same 2 engines on the left side went out. We had fighter escort came down and sat about 500 yards off to our left and right, and they escorted us all the way back to England. And fortunately, we had been bombing at 25,000 feet, so we had a lot of altitude, and we used every inch of it, and we dropped the ball turret, which was 2,000 pounds of weight, and a hell of a lot of air came through the bottom of the plane and blew the door off of the right side. And anyway, we made it. We got to the English coast with 500 feet. The fighter guys flew up close to us and waved at us and went their way. We landed, and God, I was never so glad to stand on the ground in my life. I had cramps in my left leg or right leg for a week holding that thing, because that was 3.5 hours of tough duty. And but we landed, and that's all that mattered to us, of course. But I wasn't through with my combat at that time. I flew another 3 months, and in December, I went to the commanding officer through the adjutant. He said, "What do you want to talk to the CO for?" And I said, "I want to talk to him about how many missions I'm going to be required to fly." And I didn't know I was going to be an insurance adjuster someday, so he said, "Okay, but lots of luck." So I went in and saw this bird colonel whose father was a general and an old iron-ass army officer. And I reported to him, and he said, "What are you here to bother me about?" And I said, "Well, I just want something clear. After D-Day, you raised the required number of missions from 25 to 30. And I have 30 now. And I'm a lead crew." And he said, "How about 34? He raised it to 35. He said, "How about 34? And I said, "How about 33? And he said, "Okay, but don't say another word." Yes, sir. Out the door I went, and I was tickled to death, because that means I only had a couple more missions to fly, which we flew successfully. And, it was exciting. A hell of a weight program, you could really get trimmed up doing that kind of stuff. But a lot of it was because we were in England, and England being a country that fed itself, the Army bought all of the food for us that there was to buy. And that was why I lost so much weight. Came home, missed my anniversary by a few days, and lived happily ever after. That's all for now. One more thing I'd like to say.